Poll question today, given the acquisition costs, which addition has been the best of the Rutherford Alvin era? Philip Roenick, Dakota Joshua, Andrei Kuzmenko. You can vote other if you choose. We will put it to our next guest. You can vote at Sick Harrison Price on Twitter and YouTube. We'll put it to our next guest, Canucks reporter Jeff Paterson of Rinkwide, who had a busy weekend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I mean, hey, early starts, they're not for everybody. I don't mind them. And I'm not sure they're the favorite thing for the Canucks based on the way that they came out of the starting blocks in both of those games. But you know what? All things considered, the process far from perfect, but hard to argue with 3 or 4 points at the tail end of a 4-6 stretch with a little bit of travel there and then ultimately back-to-back. So would you love to sweep of the weekend? Sure. But if it's all about just putting points in your back pocket, and that's what it seems to be for this Canuck team, now 21 victories and 44 points on the season. Again, I think they'll take that. And now the tests come a little tougher in both Nashville and Dallas to wrap up the road trip.
What did you make of young Bedard in his first game against his hometown favorite team?
Yeah, very much as advertised. 5 shots on goal. I think he had 7 attempts. The shot was there. We saw it a couple of times. It's incredible how little it takes for him to just get maximum velocity on that shot. But we've seen that for years coming up through juniors and the World Juniors. And so I'm not surprised, but 23 minutes of ice time as well. They're down. They're pressing. And of course, they're turning to him. It's just, as I watched that game, I kept thinking like, all right, this is fun and it's going to be fun for a long, long time. But man, do they have to do a job surrounding him and insulating him and finding him some players to play with. Leads the team in goals and assists and points. I think heading into that game, nobody else on the team had more than 16 points on the season. So it's going to be a slog on a lot of nights. They're not winning many games now. And I hope that he could keep his spirits up and not sort of get bogged down by all the losses. But no, he was good. Picks up a couple of assists, as we said, on 2 of the 3 goals that they scored. And I know that at the tail end of the game there, they got the goaltender out. They were pressing. I thought he got tripped up by Elias Pettersson. Petey maybe got away with one there. Could have put Chicago back on the power play. And I'm not sure that's what the Canucks wanted or needed at that stage because penalty kill now a little bit of an issue for the hockey club again. But already counting down the days to January 22nd when Connor Bedard makes his one and only visit of the season.
Nice to see him
Vancouver.
Nice to see a more prominent game for the big players on the Canucks yesterday because it's great to get bench scoring. It's great to have them contribute and steal you a win from time to time, but it's supposed to be from time to time. You're supposed to be led by your stars, and the fact that Boeser and Pettersson get on the score sheet yesterday was nice, despite the fact I don't think it was an overall dominant performance. The underlying stats for Pettersson are spectacular, but what did you think of the rise again of the big names?
Yeah, it took them all a little bit too long to get going, in my opinion. I know it was back-to-back for them, but they were outshot 10-0 at one point there. Again, this is the worst team in the National Hockey League with virtually no offensive weapons. And so they needed that power play goal late in the first period. I love the release of Elias Pettersson. It wasn't the big wind-up one-timer, but sort of Brett Hull-esque getting down to one knee and snapping it home. Nice pass from JT Miller. And yeah, I mean, on Saturday in Minnesota, that game was begging for any one of the Canucks' top players to be a game breaker. And if you can't get it done at 5-on-5, they had 5 power play opportunities against the Minnesota Wild, and they needed a power play goal. So power play remains a work in progress. It was nice to see it strike in that first period. And then, yeah, I mean, Brock Boeser, unfortunately for him, he couldn't score and extend his point streak in front of his home fans and family in Mini on Saturday. But, a game feels like an eternity now without a goal for Brock Boeser. So no surprise that he bounces back and scores in Brock Boeser fashion down the left wing, right shot, and snapped it home. And so up to 23, and he's back in the tie with Austin Matthews as we sit here and record this. So, the year of Brock Boeser continues. He's probably hoping that, or maybe he's going to apply to extend 2023 for a few more months. I hope the flipping of the calendar doesn't affect the way that he has played because that was a big goal. Obviously, 41 seconds apart, the Joshua goal followed by Brock Boeser's goal. And that sort of wrestled control of that hockey game away from the Blackhawks at that point.
The fact that the Canucks have a busy week going into the holiday season. They get obviously the travel out of the way yesterday. Easily get into Nashville and have some time there to prepare here. But they've got excuses here in terms of the ferocity of their schedule, at least in terms of the quantity of games, if not the opposition. They've got excuses, but at the same time, I don't think they want to use them by the end of the week. A 4-game week leading into the holiday break. This is you don't want to end what has been a very nice first half of the season by letting things skid into the holiday break. And there's enough signs of cracks here that, I mean, they have to be at least a little bit concerned that that's a possibility here.
Yeah, I think if you're Rick Tocchet, you're just appealing to their professional pride that, guys, it's 3 games, suck it up. Because if people haven't looked ahead, after the holiday break there, or after the holidays, it thins out considerably. I mean, they've got 1 game between December 23rd and January 2nd. They play the Flyers on the 28th, and that's a home game. So they're going to get a holiday break. They're going to get some downtime and some rest and relaxation with families, and then they pick back up, but there'll be some practice time in there. Hopefully a chance for guys to, if they're nursing things, to recover from those, and then, hit the new year running once again. But the tests get tougher here. It kind of feels like the hockey world is sleeping on the Nashville Predators, who have won 4 in a row, 7 of 8, 13 of their last 16 hockey games. Nobody's talking about the Nashville Predators. The Canucks have beaten them twice already, but that was then. And this is a Predators team that, seems to be sorting things out and figuring it out under Anne Brunette. So this one won't be easy. And then the Dallas Stars at the tail end of a trip. That's 4 and 6 for the Canucks, and that won't be easy either. But by getting 3 of 4 here on the weekend, they've set themselves up, because I can't remember if it was with you guys or if it was on Rinkwide, but I kind of thought, the days of just going 500 on a 4-game road trip, given the way this team has played, I think it's time to raise the stakes a little bit. I thought 5 of 8 points was sort of the baseline for them. So they've got 3 already. If they can even split these last 2, then they'll come home off the road with 5. Then you got to make sure that you don't slip up on that banana peel that is the San Jose Sharks, sitting there on the 23rd, final home game, visions of sugar plums dancing in your head. That's where I think, again, professionalism is going to have to kick in. They know they lost to the Sharks once already, so don't want to imagine that. For all the good the Canucks do, if they were to lose to San Jose on Saturday, they would split their season series 2-2 with the San Jose Sharks. So,
who are 6-3-1 in their last 10 games, incidentally. San Jose's figured things out a little
Not
bit.
going to happen. Not going to happen.
No, okay.
Cannot even conceive of that. And it was with us that you talked about better than 500 at this stage of the game. What did you make of Zadorov avenging Petey in last night's game, getting the gate with a lot of time left in a 2-goal game?
You know what? I liked it. I think this is a new guy that's still trying to figure out his way and his role. And I'm not one of those guys that thinks that clean hits need to be challenged with a fight all the time. To me, it wasn't even so much the hit of Reese Johnson. Like it's a hit on Elias Paterson, and I think the Canucks have to be mindful of that. I just kind of felt in a 4-2 game that maybe the Blackhawks felt, all right, another game's going by the wayside, another game that we're not going to win. If they're starting at that point to get a little squirrely and start to take some liberties, I think you have to have some guys that step up and settle things down. Look, that is part of Nikita Zadorov's role. Like, he's one of the biggest players they've got. He's a physical, imposing presence out there. And in a 2-goal game, I was okay with it. If it's a 1-goal game, I think you take a number and you know that you play the Blackhawks again. But I think that in that situation, it's a message to his teammates that he's got their back. It's not even so much a message to the Blackhawks at that point, but I do think that the league is so heavily scouted, everybody pays attention. Word gets around that if you're going to mess with Elias Pettersson, that some players on some other teams perhaps will think twice. I mean, that's the hope, obviously, but whatever the case, I thought that was a sign of a good teammate. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that he deserved the instigator. Does he chase after Reese Johnson a little bit? Sure, but it looked to me like they squared up. I didn't think he grabbed or jumped Reese Johnson in that moment. So whatever the case, Rick Tocchet said after the game too that he was okay with it. Lord knows he's been in enough of those situations himself over the years. So I think that's an element that they've been missing, quite frankly, in some recent years. So I kind of applauded Nikita Zadorov. That said, yes, it put them a man short, and Blackhawks scored on that power play, made things interesting the rest of the way. But I think there's value in a player like that sticking up for a star teammate.
Dakota Joshua, I saw the Rinkwide Vancouver post, at Rinkwide Van, the pending UFA and everything he's doing for the club, not just scoring goals and setting goals up, and he was on the score sheet again in both games this weekend. But the hits, the penalty kill time, what do you think? Do you think they go about initiating contract talks and extension talks with him? Is he a piece that has to fall after Pettersson or Hronek, and how critical would it be to bring him back given the way he's going right now, Jeff?
Right. And I think that the Canucks as an organization have to figure this out, because we know that the last regime was guilty of overvaluing and ultimately overpaying guys that are replaceable. That said, he's a 27-year-old pending UFA with decent counting stats, but also leads this team in hits. He's found this role now as one of their top penalty killing forwards and is on a line right now that absolutely is oozing chemistry and finding its way onto the score sheet too. Now, if Rick Tocchet's going to be around as the head coach for a while, and I think he is, I think he values guys like Dakota Joshua. This isn't a team that has a ton of size, and we know how much he likes guys that win their fair share of battles, and Joshua does that and doesn't just lead the Canucks in hits. He's now one of the league leaders in hits. So I do think there's some value here. I don't think that this is just another replacement player. I think you have to make that distinction if you're an organization and if you value what a player can bring. And I still think there's some upside, guys. Like, that's a nice deflection yesterday. The spinning backhand the other night against Florida. Like, this is a big guy that's got some hands on him. And I think that there is still some room for improvement. You know, do I think he's going to be a 20-goal scorer? Probably not. But right now he's on pace to be a 15-goal scorer that leads your team in hits and kills penalties. Like, there is value there. So now the question is, you know, what is the dollar amount? I would think at this stage of his career, and it hasn't always been an easy path to the National Hockey League, he's going to want some term, right? Like, he's a UFA to be. I think he's got some leverage in that regard. And so I think you'd be looking from his camp probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years. And then, you know, at what dollar figure? He's making $825 right now, I think. So, you know, is he $1.5 million guy? Can you go that far? Then it gets a little bit dicey. But I think the other broader part of this conversation is this is why you'd like Elias Pettersson under contract now and Filip Hronek, so that you know where your money's allocated and you can get your business done and you can start to slot guys in at different rates. If you sit and wait, and like Jim Rutherford made the rounds last week, Media Blitz, and he kept talking about how they have club control of Elias Pettersson for 2 more years. He's not wrong in that regard, but they're not going to let him walk to unrestricted free agency. And so really, as you try to get your ducks in a row, to me, it sheds light on the importance of getting a Pettersson deal done. And quickly after that, Filip Hronek. I mean, those are the big ticket items, but Nikita Zadorov's going to need an extension as well. And you make the trade for him. I think they want to keep him in the fold as well. And so, you know, remember the last regime, that infamous Thanksgiving after the bubble where they ran out of time, and instead of getting anything done, they let all those guys walk out the door. You know, they can't run the risk of that. And so I think it underscores the importance of getting your business done and getting your business done quickly. And so I do think, once again, it behooves his hockey club to knock on the door of Pettersson in his camp and try to get them to the bargaining table.
Yep. Our poll question today, given the acquisition cost, best edition of the Rutherford Alvin era. Joshua's right there. We put Kuzmenko, Hronek on the list. Feel free to go off the board. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long list, obviously. And you saw Casey DeSmith do his thing again on the weekend and deliver at least a point when the team in front of him didn't have it. So certainly some value in the way that he played. 2 weeks ago, if you'd asked Sam Lafferty, he probably would have been on the poll question. He's cooled just a little bit, but most of the acquisitions, low cost, but some high upside for them. But yeah, I think Dakota Joshua has played himself into consideration here. Again, there was no acquisition cost, and at the price point he's at right now, absolutely, they are extracting all sorts of value from the big winger.
Well, yeah, he's a worthy vote.
You bring up Lafferty. I wanted to ask you about Lafferty, and just the line mates for Elias.
Suter on the wing.
Yeah. Suter had a fabulous game. But are any of these guys worthy of being Elias Pettersson's winger right now? I think it's even a stretch. You know, Ilya Mikheyev as his winger is one thing, and it's okay to have an elevated Mikheyev. Like, I think on a Stanley Cup team, you probably like Mikheyev to be a third line winger. But the fact that he's there, that's not the hugest issue, as long as he's got a decorated winger alongside him, but he doesn't. It's another role player that's elevated. Is it high time? And is that part of Elias Pettersson's holdup here? Maybe is, guys, you need to surround me with some talent, and it's just not there for Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, I don't know if that can be connected necessarily to the contract situation, but if you're Elias Pettersson, you want to maximize, what you can do for this hockey club, and part of that is being put in a position to have finishers on your wing. Now, Ilya Mikheyev is up to 10 goals into double digits now. Tracking for somewhere close to 30. I don't know that he gets there, but you're right. So Mikheyev is holding up his end of the bargain. But a bit of a revolving door. Ultimately, you'd love Andrei Kuzmenko to return anywhere close to what we saw from him last year. But that's a stretch and a struggle, and not likely to happen anytime soon. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with Pius Suter sliding up into that position, but he was signed as a center. He's a natural center. The one thing is that this guy has been a 14 or 15 goal scorer in all 3 of his years in the National Hockey League. He's got some offensive chops there, and I also think he's got the kind of hockey IQ that will allow him to have a little bit of success with Elias Pettersson. But is it just a short-term situation? Does he feel like the long-term answer? Probably not. And so, they're running out of guys that they can draw on from the bottom 6 that are going to get this opportunity. And at some point, maybe you come full circle and you go back to Andrei Kuzmenko. But I think that just underscores again that they're one scoring winger short in the way that the roster is composed right now. And so the question is, can they free up more cap space? Can they make this happen ahead of the trade deadline? If they're going to go all in, and if they think that this is a year where they can actually make some noise, then that's going to be the magic trick, I suppose, is, you want to get Carson Soucy back. You want to see what you look like with your top 6D now that you've got Zadorov in the fold. And I think it focuses the attention on trying to figure out a way to cram one more scoring winger onto this roster.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jeff. They are that winger short with a lot of teams that are looking to make their first Stanley Cup playoff appearance in years. You would say, okay, well, that's the piece they're going to add after taking their lumps this spring and getting that taste back. But of course, with this team, we know they are trying to accelerate matters. And that does make me wonder whether future assets are going to be in play here between now and the trade deadline. I'm not sure it's going to be Lekkerimaki because, frankly, he is the missing profile player if he can make that smooth transition to the NHL next season. And of course, Tom Wielander is that necessary piece on the back end if he's able to move,
perhaps.
If he's able to move that, make that smooth transition. But hey, Suter played well. I mean, I know we were talking about that spine down the middle, fellas, and they finally had their 4 centers, but let's give Suter a chance there. And I'm with Jeff as well. I think Kuzmenko needs another look there before you go out and blow away future assets to replace that spot.
Jeff, his usage on the weekend didn't, lend itself to thinking that Kuzmenko was going to get that trust back anytime soon.
No, another third period where bench gets shortened, and he's part of that. But look, we go right back to training camp, guys. So we questioned Phil DiGiuseppe, right? And we thought, on a good team, not slotted quite properly. And so ultimately he has dropped to the point where he's now a guy that comes out of the lineup for Nils Zaman, but it leaves those, that same hole in the top 6. And for the time being, Nils Höglander has stepped up and earned an opportunity there, although even he's cooled a little bit here in the last week or so. But I'm not sure. I guess we're at a point in time in hockey in general where really it is more about duos than it is full lines. But I think when you've got the star power you do with Elias Pettersson, you'd love to have some consistent line mates. You'd love for him to forge a little bit of chemistry. It was there last year. That seems to be the challenge. Now, through all of that, and again, keep in mind, these were the Blackhawks yesterday. I thought Elias Pettersson, low-key, had a really nice afternoon. He scored. He had 5 shots on goal. He had 9 attempts. Underlying numbers were incredible. I think Canucks shot attempts were 16-3 when he was on the ice. That's the Blackhawks. They just don't have enough depth to match up, right? Like if they try to close down Brock Boeser and JT Miller, it's going to free up a guy like Elias Pettersson to run wild, and he did. And so his line with Mikheyev and Suter, and I thought Suter did some really nice work on Mikheyev's goal. So, there was a lot to like there. Problem is, there are much better opponents lying in wait for the Vancouver Canucks than the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, quite right. Jeff, great stuff. Look forward to catching up later in the week. Thanks for this.
All right, guys. Thank you.
This clip brought to you by Betway. Must be 19 plus to play. Please play responsibly.